Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Halloween Horror Fest. I'm Dan. With me, as always, is Tenian. We're continuing the month's festivities with a Korean, or I should say South Korean film called Exhuma. The film came out just this year in February, directed by Jang Jae-hyun, and features an all-star South Korean cast. We're going to do a non-spoiler review, so we don't want to ruin it for you. This is a film that very much hinges on mystery and surprise. We don't want to take that from you. The premise is that Choi Min-sik's character, Kim Sang-deok, is a feng shui specialist. Choi Min-sik in particular, you may remember from Park Chan-wook's Old Boy. He's one of South Korea's biggest stars. What he specifically does is he isolates burial plots using the principles of feng shui for rich clients. They can bury them, have themselves buried and have their family members buried in spiritually pristine ground. He works with a partner. Yoo Hai-Jin plays Young-gyun, who is an undertaker. His role isn't totally clear to me, but he does provide important moral support and some comic relief.
He's one of my
Uh,
favorite characters. Yeah.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
great, and he's a noted actor. He's one of uh, Yoo Hai-Jin is one of South Korea's most successful actors, most respected actors, and he's always good whenever he turns up. Kim Sang-deok is tapped by Lee Do-hyun, played by Kim Go-eun, who is a shaman, the equivalent of a medicine woman, and for the purposes of this film, also the exorcist figure. And meanwhile, Lee Do-hyun plays Yoon Bong-gil. He's a shaman as well, but he's in training. And they're hired by a client, and his family is being haunted by a mysterious ghostly presence. And Warim, the shaman, eventually isolates that what's going on here is this is a case of ancestral haunting, an unrestful, vengeful ancestor, a spirit of an ancestor that is haunting the family. The principal characters come together and try to exorcise this influence through the combination of shamanic practices and feng shui. The film breaks down into roughly two parts. The first part of the film deals with the basic premise, the idea of the rich client, the mysteries of his background and his family's background, and the mystery behind why this ghost is not at rest, why it's vengeful. And as the plot line continues, the question of where this ancestor was buried is increasingly the focus. The second part of the film, I can't say much about because I don't want to get into spoilers just yet, but I will say that the protagonists of this story find that they have bitten off way more than they thought they were actually going to have to chew. And that's one of the best things about this film is that it really delivers a serious dramatic payoff. The wow factor for this, when it's finally revealed what exactly they're dealing with, is pretty epic and pretty exciting. But what was your response to this film, having seen it for the first time?
Yeah, I liked the combination of tones. I mean, the predominant note is horror, since it's a horror film, and part gothic mystery, but also part kind of thrilling action movie in a sense too, that I didn't expect in kind of the style of something like the Brendan Fraser mummy film. I mean, not that campy or cartoonish, but has that sense of adventure to it. Also, like I didn't expect to have such characters like the shaman, the geomancer character, and mortician, but you really get invested by them. And I found myself really enjoying those characters, and actually so much that I could see further sequels spawned from this, featuring their further adventures and more mysteries that they would solve in future films because they were such a good group of characters. And yeah, it had a wonderful kind of gothic atmosphere. And I liked also, particularly, what really stood out was the folklore occult aspect of the horror, that there is this historical dimension to the horror, deeply rooted in South Korean shamanism. I think also it's just a good Halloween movie, too. Like it has all the elements you're looking for in a Halloween film. It has ghouls, ghosts, exorcism, the occult, It's called Exhuma, of course, excavation, burials, all the nice like gothic Halloween ambiance that you're looking for. So it was a lot of fun, I have to say. So
Yeah, I mean it's a great movie. I think it's not just a great horror movie. I think it's a great film, period. Um, going to the actors, I want to talk about the cast. I mean, one of the things I was just struck by was how much chemistry everyone had. Choi Min-sik and Yoo Hai-Jin in particular, I thought that their relationship, I really kind of just believed that these guys had known each other for years, were lifelong friends, not just business partners, but these are two guys who know each other really well. There's a real sense of emotional depth in that relationship, and I feel the same way with the other characters as well. Everyone just does so well with their parts. I chalk that up to the great cast, right? So like Choi Min-sik and everyone supporting him. He's fantastic. I think the character he plays in particular, he just captures the combination of cynicism and grittiness, but also this kind of like submerged subterranean idealism that kind of comes more and more to the surface when he realizes that the future for my family, my daughter and my granddaughter, the future for them is at stake. And that's when he becomes almost kind of like a hero of the Old West, emerges out from under the shadow of his cynicism and, takes over the film and becomes a kind of hero figure, a big time hero figure. Choi Min-sik just sells the crap out of that. I think he does such a good job.
he
He
does.
was definitely the star for me, not only in the sense that he gets top billing, but also just the dramatic tension and the engagement of that character and the way he plays it. Like the other thing I think is really incredible about the characters is it's very rare for a horror film is they behave in ways that seem very real to me. I'm not aware. I have to go back and watch the film again to be sure, but I don't think there's a point in that film where I think that was a really stupid decision. No person would ever do that, right? Which of course that's what critics of horror films are constantly saying is that these characters are unsympathetic and stupid. They act in a way that is completely counter to common sense. They get themselves in trouble when they don't need to, and that's why they end up dead. Is because they just make stupid decisions. I feel like it's completely the reverse there here. I mean, if there's a stupid thing that these characters have done, it centers on the principal protagonist, uh, Kim Sang-gyuk. And what he's doing isn't stupid, it's just cynical, right? So now he spends his days at the beginning of the film cherry picking pristine burial plots for rich buttheads. So the line, he's using his spiritual acumen, his insight into the spiritual realm to make a buck and um, create further division between the haves and the have-nots, who not only do they have all the money on the earthly realm, but they also get to have the best spiritual experience as well because they can afford these glamorous burial sites.
Yeah.
That's corrupt. It's not really stupid. They behave in ways that feel very real to me, and they're always sympathetic. I like these characters. I'm rooting for these characters.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to accomplish for me as a viewer. Like, I'm not usually a big fan of horror films that are character centered. I prefer the focus to be on the dread, the horror, the monster, for instance.
Yeah.
The idea that I was as into this as I was, I think
Hmm.
that's a credit to the cast, but also to the writing. I think
Yeah.
it's a well written film, at least as it translates.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it approaches again everything in a realistic manner, and I again a very interesting, refreshing take on the cult and the supernatural, rooted in a culture and a cultural tradition and a cultural tradition of magic and religion in a way that is very powerful and resonant and fascinating. I mean, it got me interested in like taking a more kind of anthropological kind of lens and putting it on this movie and doing some research into South Korean shamanism and magic. It got me very intrigued to like dig deeper and like learn about some of these traditions. It was that interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, the shamanic sequences of these high energy dance, ritualistic dances, with drums and chanting are just mesmerizing. They're some of my favorite parts of the film. Segueing into the storytelling, and I think I'll focus specifically on the special effects. And I thought that the special effects for this film were really artfully handled. So it's a combination of practical effects and CGI, but it's very light on the CGI.
It is.
And sort of how you and I have talked about CGI in the past, it uses a combination of practical effects and CGI in a way that I think is really successful, and really does come off for me.
Yeah, it
What do you
does.
think?
Yeah. The director, Jang Jae-hyun, I was reading, really made a point to have as little digital and CGI as possible, and even filming locations and preferring actual locations and environments to building sets. You know, if he could have an actual real background to enrich
Mm,
the movie, he would use that. And that goes into the special effects too. Yeah, great practical effects. They have definite visceral material edginess to them, a texture, and I think particularly in a film like this, which is an occult folkloric horror movie, I think that choice to go more practical gives it more of an earthy, textured quality, rich quality that I think really works with the tone of the movie as well. So yeah, the effects really worked for me, and the sparing use of CGI, when it was used in a way to enhance the storytelling, enhance the mood and ambiance and atmosphere. So yeah, hats off to the special effects team that worked on this movie. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think this is very much a horror film for people who normally wouldn't like a horror film. I think that people will like this one. So especially like keep in mind, like if you're one of those folks who you watch horror films on, around Halloween because that's what people do, but you're not normally a fan of the genre, I would definitely check this one out.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it bucks the trends of that you usually see in these types of films. The characters are all sympathetic. They all seem really smart and put together. They behave in smart ways. They're
Yeah.
resourceful. They're flexible. And like you said, the world they inhabit is a living, breathing world with a sense of history. So it does nothing about the film feels cookie cutter to me.
Yeah. It definitely gets my recommendation. I think the one thing I would say that it didn't quite have for me is scares. I mean, I was
Mm.
never, terrified, or nothing much in the film really got too much under my skin in terms of the scare
Mm.
factor. And I felt like this movie was entertaining. I mean, it delivered on that level, even though, the shock factor wasn't really emphasized, and it doesn't always have to be, as long as the other things are working. So, yeah.
Yeah. I will say though, I agree with you. I wasn't really scared of the film. I was consistently excited. I was frequently experiencing a kind of sense of wonder around the supernatural elements. So in some
Yeah.
way, it was similar to watching a great fantasy film for me,
Yeah.
which is ironic when I say that because the film isn't a fantasy film. It's based on real Korean experience,
Yeah.
to the extent that it deals with folk religion. But having said that, I do think that one of the big draws for me, other than everything else that I've hinted at the beginning, is I think it has a great monster. Um, I don't want to give too much of it away, but this thing is cool, man. I mean, it is the cool factor is there with a capital C for me. And so when again, no spoilers, but when there is a turn and a reveal, I'm like that that's just so cool. It's
Yeah.
just such a
Yeah.
cool thing. It is intimidating. I think the idea of the evil that these characters have to face is intimidating and scary. And that level, it's not necessarily dread inspiring. It's more awe inspiring for me. Yeah, great effects and great use of the effects. Great direction to, the way the effects were utilized and appear on camera. It really works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a breath of fresh air, actually, in terms of across the board, having good, likable characters that you were on board with, the gothic atmosphere, good effects. Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff worked for me. I mean, like I said, yeah, I didn't find it too scary, but I mean, I wasn't too hung up on that because I was having a lot of fun with the movie and it really entertained.
The other thing I think is really satisfying about the film is how thematically, emotionally satisfying it is that, the stakes are real here, and I have a sense that there's this, you know, this really complex philosophical, spiritual battle unfolding that has to do with history and culture and politics and family and ancestry. Sort of like again, like a great Gothic piece, right? There's all these really visceral, close to the bone themes being sewn into the narrative, and I think the film utilizes them so well. And it's a 2 hour film. It's a long film, but I never felt time dragging. I wasn't bored or getting frustrated or distracted, because it just, it's sort of like watching The Lord of the Rings in a sense. As long as those films are, the stakes are so high and the storytelling is so gripping that I don't really feel time passing. This has been the non-spoiler review of Exhuma. Please go see this film. It's amazing. And come back for the spoiler review. Please like and subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments.